Many years ago, I was at the Frankston Blues and Guitar Festival, and on stage was a young Australian blues lady with a growl in her voice, a $1 million smile, and blowing the blues out of that guitar. She recorded 5 albums with the Mojos, an all-female blues outfit, before embarking on an international solo career that produced 8 studio and 2 live albums, and performing with the who's who of international and Australian blues greats. She is the first lady of Australian blues, and Fiona Boyes is my special guest. Who was Fiona Boyes before she became a musician?
Actually, I studied graphic design, and I went to Swinburne. That was College of Technology in those days. Went into advertising, which is where a lot of graphic designers go. Went travelling, did the young hippie backpacker thing, got one-way tickets to Singapore, and then proceeded to travel around the world for a year in Asia and India and Europe. And so then I went back and ended up working for Lonely Planet as a young traveller, doing my graphic design more in publishing.
There was no real music influence there in the early years?
Actually, I came from a family that very much valued music. We all learned instruments. I played piano for a few years when I was really little. Then, of course, we had recorders at school. Everybody loved those plastic squeaky recorders, didn't they? But I ended up getting onto treble recorder, and then for the first few years of high school I played clarinet.
You won a Main-Tone acoustic guitar in a coffee shop talent quest, is that right? Was that the event that ignited your music career?
Yes, it was actually. I had become a huge blues fan. I first met blues when I went to college. Kim Windsor was the president of the Folk and Blues Club on campus. He was the first person that played me some old blues, and I think he was so astonished to find that I was really enthusiastic and loved it to bits, and I became a big fan. So I'd been listening to music for a long time, and I guess somewhere along the line I decided I wanted to have a go myself, and so I was, sitting listening to a lot of early Big Bill Broomsey and Tommy Johnson, Mississippi John Hurt, and playing acoustic finger-picking country blues. And then one day I heard that there was an open mic night in Glen Huntly at a cafe called Fat Bob's. So I played a few songs, and at the end of the night they said, well, you know what, you've won tonight. Song, and the prize is a beautiful brand new Main acoustic guitar. And I was thrilled but beside myself, because it meant I had to go and play again in public. But it really did launch me into, really starting to tackle the guitar, and I ended up getting, little gigs at the place at Fat Bob's, and then places like the Green Man, other venues at the time who were playing acoustic. Thank you, Martin.
You were a late starter in your mid-20s. You absorbed and cooked up a unique blend of blues, swing, big band, jazz, country, rockabilly and rock. Unmistakably your own sound. So how does a homegrown Aussie girl write and perform as naturally as someone who was born in the heart and homeland of American blues?
One of my first influences would have been Dutch Tildes, definitely, because at that time I was listening to acoustic country blues fingerpickers, but Dutch was the first live musician that I saw playing, and to sit in a small venue like the Homebush Hotel and be very close to him and see a musician playing that stuff, and he did Big Bill Broomsey to a T. The first stuff I ever heard was early pre-war blues and country blues and classic Chicago blues. But my parents listened to big band jazz and swing stuff, so that's, maybe it's just that idea of listening to a broad range of stuff and also casting the net wider than, one of the things I've been most passionate about has been the idea that blues is a much wider genre than a lot of people give it credit for. So, I've had often people who've come up to me at gigs and said, look, a friend brought me, I'm not really a blues fan, but I love what you do, and now I suddenly think I'm a blues fan.
You've won over 30 awards so far.
Wow. Gosh.
Is there one that is, really special? this is the one.
A real pivotal moment for me when I won the International Blues Challenge in Memphis. As a mostly self-taught guitarist, I certainly haven't had guitar lessons, but you're always learning from every musician. Every time you look at a gig and you think, what chord is he playing there? I must go home and try that. So it was a profound thing for me to put myself out there and enter the local playoffs for the Melbourne Blues Appreciation Society. Had local playoffs, and if you won the local competition, you got sent to Memphis to represent Melbourne at the International Blues Challenge in Memphis. I got a ticket. I was sponsored by the MBAS, and they sent me to Memphis, and it was my first trip to the States. The International Blues Challenge is run by the American Blues Foundation, the peak body for blues in the world, in Memphis, and the competition is held on Beale Street, which is a very historic place for the blues, and all the heats are held in different bars. I was by then playing original material. I didn't know if they would understand my accent, my sense of humour, my original songs, and it's very, very competitive. You know, I had a song I'd written which was my tribute song to Memphis Minnie, which is a song called "She Could Play That Thing." I guess pointing out that thing that, you know, back in the day, Minnie was considered an anomaly as a gun guitar playing woman, and here I was, you know, she was obviously the influence, and so I sang this tribute song to Minnie, and all the time I was thinking, here I am in America on Beale Street, where she would have played back in the day, and I was so thrilled just to be there. I wasn't really thinking about competing, I was just thinking about playing my music as best I could and really enjoying the opportunity.
You came home with an award for it.
I ended up winning. So that was a huge thrill, and also it meant that it was it opened doors for me to go back to the States and to become involved in some different festivals and events, which then put me in closer proximity to other great musicians and, as I said, to some of my heroes.
So what is it like sharing the stage with some of these American greats?
Fantastic, scary, exciting, exhilarating. What I find is there's been times it's like, well, so-and-so said you could get up. Well, the first thing is that you're not always invited. So even if I didn't feel like it, or I felt scared or very nervous, my rule is if you're asked and you have the opportunity, even if it's slightly outside of the music that you normally do, that you should jump in with both feet and give it a red hot go, because even if it's a bit of a train wreck, you'll really learn something from the experience of doing that. So, for example, I had the opportunity to jam with Bob Margolin. Bob, of course, played for many years with Muddy Waters and is a fabulous keeper of that tradition, and he plays a lot of other great stuff. He's just a great guitarist, and his feel and his sense of timing and attack. It's like the blues licks that you've heard at every blues jam, but this is going back to the source and really hear those familiar licks, those Muddy Water licks, but played with all the attack and attitude that the original, and I think in some ways Bob even plays it with more oomph than Muddy did. It's just astonishing and very inspiring. So when I was at the IBC, Bob Margolin often does a jam at the Rum Boogie on Beale Street, and I was invited to go and join that, which was like, oh my God, here I am with Bob Margolin. That led to trying to create a tour for Bob to come out to Australia. As it turned out, we'd set up some dates and some ideas, and Bob wasn't available. He had clashing dates, so the booking agency said, would you do it with Hubert Sumlin? And I was just like, oh my God, Hubert Sumlin. And one of the first things I remember as a young student at college was hearing a Howling Wolf track and just being blown away by the vocals, being blown away by the guitar. So would it be okay if Hubert Sumlin came and joined my band and we played? Yes, that would be great, I said.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll take that.
I was so excited, but also a little bit daunted in some ways, because at that stage, you know, I had to put together a band and I had to think about playing Chicago blues. And in fact, you know, when we played with Hubert, I put together a band of people that, you know, I remember going and seeing before I was a player. And I also asked Chris Wilson to join that tour, because I thought I need a big bloke to sing the Howling Wolf songs. And I think it was a sound check somewhere. Chris wasn't around and I sang a little bit of Smokestack Lightning, and Hubert said to me, you need to sing that song. And his encouragement sort of empowered me, and because I would never have thought of tackling that sort of stuff, and then it's, you know, ended up becoming part of my repertoire. It's been a favourite track on my Box and Dice album. You know, I look back on that and think that would never have happened, I don't think, if Hubert hadn't been so encouraging. And I spent some time with him at other stages. I spent a weekend with him in his home, hanging out and jamming and talking, and everybody who ever, you know, had any interaction with Hubert seems to say the same thing, that not only was he an incredibly important seminal blues player, you know, particularly all his work with Howling Wolf, but also just a lovely guy, a real gentleman.
Your studio albums have a unique personality. So does songwriting come naturally to you, or is it something you have to work on?
A bit from column A and a bit from column B. There's some songs that have almost written themselves, and other songs just never quite sit right for a while. There's one song, for example, that I wrote that's, I think it's on the Lucky 13 album, called Stranger in Your Eyes.
I thought I knew you, baby. That was way back when. I was young and foolish. I thought the love would never end.
And it was about a sad episode, a devastating breakup in my life. And at the time, I was so hurt I would never have thought to write a song about it. But that sense of when you're looking into your partner's, soon-to-be ex-partner's eyes and thinking, what's going on here? I thought I knew you. The line, I see a stranger in your eyes. I wrote that down on a piece of paper and I put it away in a drawer. And I guess about 5 years later, I got up one morning, I just went to my guitar, picked up the instrument and played the song. The lyrics, the arrangement, the chord progression, it was like I already knew the song. So every now and again you get a song like that, which is like a gift. As I'm writing, I can hear the influences of things that I've been listening to and musicians I've had a chance to meet, some of the current interesting things that are happening in my musical life. So each album becomes like a snapshot of what's happening at that time. Well, see, the Box and Dice album this was wonderful because I actually had the name of the album, a great cover shot, and the inspiring instrument before I had any of the music. Over the years, a guy called Shane Soul from a little town called Yakandanda had been bringing different cigar boxes to different festivals. This one's a little bit out of the way, but I'm going to hold it up in a second. Mostly the cigar boxes, he was making them often out of biscuit tins or cigar boxes, vintage biscuit tins, broomstick handles. Most traditionally cigar boxes are 3 strings, and I didn't even play slide. And I would say, Shane Soul, I know you're making these instruments all very nice, but I'm a guitarist, what am I going to do with these? And I couldn't get my head around them at all. And then one day, I was actually going through Yakandanda. I was playing with Watermelon Slim, actually. and he was playing dobro and stuff. And this was hanging on the wall.
That is a very nice piece of work.
This was hanging on the wall of the pub. Shane's little store, his little cigar box emporium, was just down the street, and he put up a few instruments around the pub as a bit of decoration. And this one was the first one. It says number 1 on the back in Texter there, just in case. So this is 2013, late in the year, and he'd built this one as an experiment with 6 strings. So it was the closest thing I'd seen to an actual guitar.
Yeah, well, you've got a Stratocaster neck on it.
Yeah. So anyway, so this is the box, and there's the dice. And so I picked it, I got it off the wall and I actually played it at the gig with Watermelon Slim, and I just thought, so this was the gateway drug to the cigar box thing. And shortly after I was on tour due to be on tour in Europe, and I thought, Germans like rock and blues, they'll probably like some slide. So I took this instrument with me, and that was the beginning of my slide journey. I've just come back from, I revisited Yak just recently at the Yakandanda Cigar Box Festival.
I just love the name of that.
Yeah. I started off with the Box and Dice, and that inspired the Box and Dice album. Just before I was recording the album, a week or so beforehand, there you go, if you just want to hold that one a minute.
Oh, gladly.
I caught up with Shane again, and he said, I've built you this one. Now, this is obviously a far stretch from the 6-stringer. This is more like a traditional cigar box. It's made out of a very large cigar box. A piece of wood. It's got 2 loose bolts. You have to be careful when you string it that they don't pull out. And because the action is so high, I'm not sure if you can see that, the action is so high you have to commit to playing it completely slide. And picked up from Watermelon Slim in Clarksdale, Mississippi these days. I play that with a little whiskey bottle as a slide.
Which I notice there's a few swigs missing already.
Well, look, sometimes you can be in a gig, you can be on stage for a long time. It keeps you away from the bar. And, there are some gigs. You need a little shot of something. So the idea is to... is that you play it and you fret it like that. So it's obviously a completely different way of thinking about playing. And as I said, this one arrived on my lap about a week before the Box and Dice session was booked. And the fact that I had no idea how to drive it sent me into a creative frenzy, and I wrote a couple of songs that ended up making the album. And since then, this has become a really favoured instrument at all my gigs, and because it's so quirky, and yet it's amazing what you can get out of essentially 2 notes.
Yeah, you've got a 3-stringer down there as well. This one.
Now, having gone to the Yakandanda Cigar Box Festival with 2 cigar boxes, and this was actually a place where, of course, it was right opposite Shane Soul's Oz Blues and Roots and Cigar Box Emporium. This is the shop that's like a tiny hole in the wall. The name is much longer than the actual... the name is bigger than the shop, But different makers also turned up, and lo and behold, I came back from the guitar festival, the Cigar Box Festival, with another cigar box, and this is actually made by Steve Plater, Salty Dog Guitars, and Steve is out of Ballarat, and he and Marion, a well-known roots blues duo, playing a Salty Dog. So he makes these ones, and they're more traditional, more of a broomstick neck, a small cigar box, and only has 3 strings, this one, and it's got acoustic strings on it. So this is really where the bottleneck and these... more the slide, the lap slide and the bottleneck is just... meeting now, and as I said, Steve gave me this instrument on Saturday night, so I've had a chance to play it once, really. I don't know quite what it does, but I might even try and play a song for you on it later on.
You will, and of course you realise it is Jack's Place policy that any guitars that enter this studio don't leave, so...
Yes, that's not happening.
Because who is the preacher?
The preacher is my husband, and he is actually an ordained Anglican priest. You know, I had songs at that time off earlier albums like The Preacher and the Yellow-Haired Gal, which, you know, featured lyrics like, there ain't nothing but a yellow-haired gal make a preacher lay his Bible down. Because at that time he came on the road with me and we both worked in the music business for many years. And people in America would go, is he really a preacher? Where all's the preacher at? And I go, yeah, he's down the back drinking bourbon and smoking cigars. Go and buy a CD. And they'd be scandalised. He's a very interesting, fabulously complicated and layered guy. A lot of his work over the years has been as an academic and in social justice areas, as well as being a regular minister. His official role is Canon to the Arts for the Anglican Diocese of Canberra-Goulburn, and he's writing a PhD thesis on the intersection of spirituality, traditional theology and the blues. Because there is that kind of notion in traditional blues world that there's, you know, church house versus the barrel house, which, you know, I personally don't think is the case. I think it's pretty much two sides of the same coin, but hopefully we'll get to read the preacher's thesis and he'll tell us all about it.
Cool. Let's talk about the Live at Bluesville album.
Okay.
How did that come about? How did you get involved with Mookie Brill and Rich Del Grosso?
Yes. The Live from Bluesville thing came about because essentially, well, Mookie Brill at that time was playing bass with Bob Margolin. So I'd sort of seen Mookie, but it really came about because we were all in Memphis one year for the Blues Music Awards, and we'd all been nominated. They're really the peak recognition for blues artists internationally. It's a huge thrill to actually be nominated, and I was nominated, I think that might have been the year I put out Lucky 13, and it was nominated as in the final 5 for Best Contemporary Blues Album of the Year, which was fabulous for my first American recording. And it was exciting going to the BMAs because everyone's there and everyone dresses up, and a lot of the nominees are performing, and it's a red carpet affair. It's fabulous. So I was there as a nominee. Mookie Brill was nominated and I believe won that year, which year it was, for Best Bass Player. Rich Del Grosso was nominated in the category they had sort of like other instruments as a mandolin player. And a lot of people think of mandolin as being sort of like a country or a bluegrass instrument, but Rich has played with people like Aunt Michelle and at that black string tradition, and he really plays blues. He's a great big bear of a guy playing this little thing. It's like a bear on a bicycle, but he's a wonderful blues player, and so we kind of met in the bar and were drinking and I said, look, I've got a little gig. I was going to do a little show at the Pig on Beale, which was going back to the venue where I won the IBC, the International Blues Challenge, and doing a little show. And I said, why don't you guys come and sit in? So we played a few songs. We went and jammed at this gig, and it just had such a great feel. Mookie is a fabulous player, a great singer and harmonica player too, but he's played with a lot of the old players, and so he's playing double bass. Great feel, plays great rockabilly too, and it just had a really nice feel. So at that time I was living in America, and I was living in Portland, Oregon. Mookie was living in Charlotte, North Carolina. Rich in Houston, Texas. So we were like in 3 corners of America. But we worked out that there was one point in the year ahead that we would all be in proximity. And the place where we all ended up being close to was Washington, D.C. So we got together and we planned to make a live recording. It had to be done pretty much live and quickly, because we did it with Bill Wax from Sirius FM's Bluesville, hence the name Live from Bluesville. And it was a snowy day. I remember there was a bottle of tequila involved. Was that a bottle? Yes. And we pretty much made that album in an hour and a half or 2 hours.
It's two of my favourite Fiona Boyes songs.
Yeah.
A Big, Bigger, Biggest.
Yeah.
And Two-Legged Dog.
Story so tall, Niagara Falls is small. Big, big, biggest, well, big, big, biggest. Hey, you never met the truth, I figures. Close to 2 + 2 = 10 to you. Big, big, biggest.
Oh, good choices. See, that's another thing about songwriting is I think you actually, people think of the blues as being, sad and miserable music, but you actually, I always think of blues as being a much wider genre, and I cast a broad net, and you do have the opportunity to write double entendre songs and some really quite cheeky stuff, which I'm not sure you can get away with in other sort of sorts of music. Big, Bigger, Biggest. I'm going to give a shout out now to my friend over in Western Australia, Hans Deberitz, the Thunderstick, the Norwegian Thunderstick. Hans said, I've got this idea for a song about, which is just Big, Bigger, Biggest, but I can't get started, I don't know where to go with it. So there's just a title. And I wrote it for a friend who at the time was working in a band, who had a band leader that was always talking things up. The check was always in the mail, the tour was always going to pay more than it actually did pay. So if you listen to the lyrics of that, the big fat mouth flapping north and south, Big, Bigger, Biggest,
Who's the character you're singing about in Two-Legged Dog?
That was my partner at the time. A country boy who, yes, I was very fond of dogs, and so, yeah, I guess it was that chance to have a little fun with that subject matter and draw on that tradition of the double entendre song. And one of my favourite bits is that it was the first time I barked. Actually, I'd just written that song. It's all coming back to me. I'd just written that song, and I went out, and I ended up having to play this gig that was out in rural New South Wales at a pub where I was just playing just acoustic at that time, and I don't think they had seen the local blokes drinking in that country pub. I don't think they'd ever seen a woman playing guitar, someone not playing covers, someone playing acoustic, someone without a band. I know the list went on, and I was just, it was a 4-hour solo gig. It was like a badge of honour gig to get through. But I remember road testing that song and it being a huge hit and getting everybody in the bar to bark. And then afterwards, they decided they quite liked me and they weren't going to kill me.
What can we expect with the new album?
I'm still assembling things, but it's almost like a notional trip from Como, Mississippi, through Clarksdale and Jackson, Mississippi, a little bit more soul blues, down through Teddy's Juke Joint in Zachary, Louisiana to New Orleans. It's going to be like a road trip of music,
Great.
Of different things. And I'd written a couple of things which were kind of Louisiana-ish, looking for, and I thought, I know we can probably record this song, but wouldn't it be great to have harmonica or Cajun Louisiana-style accordion? I wonder how I could do that. And just at that time, I had contact from Johnny Sansone, a fabulous player from New Orleans, who I also know from meeting at the Blues Music Awards at different gigs around the place. And so as it turns out, I'm going to do a couple of days recording now and a couple of days recording in January because Johnny Sansone's coming out and we're going to do some tour dates together.
Wow. Where can music lovers download and buy your albums?
Well, you can find them at my website, www.fionaboyes.com. The only trick is that it is ES. FionaBoyes.com. There's also links there to Blue Empress Music, JB Hi-Fi and places like that. Should stock some Australian blues. If they don't, give them a hard time. If you are watching this right here in my hometown of Melbourne, great record stores like the Basement Discs that have done a really good job of keeping a wide range of all sorts of music, but particularly blues and roots, would be a good place to start too.
Great. Fiona, thank you for coming to Jack's Place. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. and let's go tuck into that food and red wine that Amita has served up for us.
Sounds like a splendid idea. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Well, biggest, hey, man, you're too big for your britches. You tell stories so tall, and folks look small. Biggest, well, biggest, hey, you never met the truth, I figures. Because 2 + 2 = 10 to you. Biggest. It don't matter what nobody says, you can always go one better. You get the last word, check everybody, you got to act that too.